They sent the black girl to auction as a joke, but the rich rancher chose her instead, shouted the auctioneer, as the young woman stood trembling on the wooden platform, dust swirling around her worn boots, while the frontier crowd erupted in cruel laughter. The townsfolk saw her as nothing more than entertainment, a punchline to their twisted humor, destined for a life of endless mockery and servitude. But when the mysterious cattle baron stepped forward from the shadows, his weathered face serious and calculating, everything changed. He wasn't there for their sick amusement. The dying rancher needed something the desperate woman possessed, something that could save his crumbling empire or destroy them both. His failing health meant 1 year to succeed, and her hidden knowledge was their only hope. Would this unlikely alliance shatter the unforgiving rules of the Wild West, or would it bury them beneath the weight of a world determined to see them fail? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Eula May's stomach growled as she swept the front steps of Henderson's General Store. 3 days without a proper meal. The coin jar at home held only dust and hope. Her father had been gone 6 months now. The fever took him quick, leaving behind debts and a daughter the town barely tolerated. She worked odd jobs when folks felt generous. Most days they didn't. The morning sun beat down on Millbrook Township's main street. Horses kicked up dust clouds while their riders conducted business. Eula May kept her head down and her broom moving. Well, look what we got here. Billy Crane's voice cut through the morning quiet. 3 of his friends flanked him, all sporting the same cruel grin. Eula May's grip tightened on the broom handle. Billy owned the largest general store in town. His daddy owned half the buildings on Main Street. That made Billy think he owned everything else too. You still playing dress-up, girl? Billy stepped closer. Pretending you belong with decent folk? She kept sweeping. Experience taught her that silence sometimes made them lose interest. Sometimes. My pa says your daddy had some mighty strange ideas about cattle. Billy kicked dirt onto her freshly swept steps. Said he thought he was smarter than white men who've been ranching their whole lives. The words hit like a physical blow. Her father had been brilliant. His innovative grazing techniques had saved 3 ranches back in Texas. But explaining that to Billy would be like teaching arithmetic to a fence post. Got an idea, boys. Billy's grin widened. Town's been talking about what to do with our little problem here. Maybe it's time we had ourselves an auction. The other men laughed. Eula May's blood turned cold. Set up a platform right there in the square. Billy pointed to the center of town. Let folks bid on what they want to do with her. Might be entertaining. They walked away laughing. Eula May's hands shook as she finished her work. By noon, word had spread through Millbrook like wildfire. An auction in the town square. Entertainment for a slow Tuesday. Some folks called it shameful. Most called it overdue. Sheriff Granger leaned against the saloon wall, watching the preparations with dark eyes. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. He made no move to stop what was coming. Daisy Caldwell hurried out of her bakery, flour still dusting her apron. This is wrong, Sheriff. You know it, and I know it. Granger's gaze remained fixed on the growing crowd. Law don't say I can't auction my services, Daisy. That's all this is. Services. Daisy's voice dripped contempt. That what we're calling human dignity now? The sheriff said nothing. 2 hours later, they came for Eula May. Billy and his friends found her behind the store, trying to make herself invisible. They dragged her to the square where a makeshift platform waited. The crowd pressed close, faces she'd seen her whole life now twisted with cruel anticipation. These people had bought bread from her father, had shaken his hand, had praised his work when it suited them. Step up! Step up! Billy called out like a carnival barker. Time to solve Millbrook's little problem. Eula May climbed onto the platform. Her legs threatened to buckle, but she forced them straight. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Never let them see you break, baby girl. Stand tall and show them what dignity looks like. She lifted her chin and stared straight ahead. The crowd jeered. Someone threw a rotten apple that splattered near her feet. Billy raised his hands for quiet. Now what am I bid for a year's worth of cleaning services? $2, someone shouted. Make her work the hog pens. Kitchen scrubbing's all she's good for. Each comment felt like a lash. Eula May closed her eyes and thought of her father's hands, gentle and sure as he examined a sick calf, the way he could look at pasture land and see exactly what it needed, the respect in ranchers' voices when they spoke his name. She was her father's daughter. She carried his knowledge, his wisdom, his revolutionary understanding of livestock and land management. These people saw only what they chose to see. The bidding continued. Voices rose and fell like a twisted song. Eula May stood perfectly still, preserving what remained of her dignity. Then the crowd fell silent. A horse approached from the edge of town. Its rider sat straight in the saddle despite his obvious age. Silas Thornton, the wealthiest rancher in 3 territories. The man who owned more cattle and land than the rest of them combined. He rarely came to town. When he did, people stepped aside and tipped their hats. Silas Thornton commanded respect through wealth, success, and an air of dangerous mystery. He dismounted slowly, his movements careful but deliberate. The crowd parted as he walked toward the platform, his pale blue eyes fixed on Eula May with an intensity that made her breath catch. Billy cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Thornton, sir, we were just having a bit of fun. Didn't expect to see you in town today." Thornton ignored him. He studied Eula May like she was a prize horse he might purchase. She met his gaze without flinching. "Miss?" Thornton's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I'm offering you employment as my ranch manager." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Eula May's world tilted sideways. Ranch manager, not servant, not charity case. Manager. Billy sputtered protests. The crowd buzzed with disbelief. Sheriff Granger pushed off from the saloon wall, suddenly alert. Thornton extended his hand toward the platform. "The position comes with full authority over operations, livestock decisions, and personnel management. Interested?" Eula May stared at Thornton's outstretched hand. Ranch manager. The words echoed in her head like thunder. The crowd pressed closer, their shocked whispers creating a buzzing wall of sound. Billy's face had gone pale. Sheriff Granger moved through the crowd, his hand resting on his gun belt. "Mr. Thornton," Billy stammered. "Sir, I think there's been some confusion. This here's just a bit of town fun. Nothing serious." Thornton's gaze never left Eula May's face. "Miss, my offer stands. Ranch manager of the Thornton spread. Full operational authority." Eula May's mind raced. This had to be a trap. Rich men didn't offer management positions to desperate girls standing on auction platforms, especially not girls who looked like her. But something in Thornton's eyes looked genuine, desperate even. "Why?" The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. "Because my ranch is dying." Thornton's voice carried across the silent square. "And I believe you might know how to save it." The crowd erupted. Voices rose in protest and disbelief. Billy stepped forward, his face flushed red. "Now see here, Thornton. This girl don't know nothing about ranching. Her daddy might have had some fool ideas, but that don't make her qualified for nothing." Thornton finally looked at Billy. The temperature in the square seemed to drop 10 degrees. "My horse there is favoring his left front leg." Thornton pointed to his mount. "Miss, what do you see?" Eula May studied the animal. The gelding shifted his weight subtly, keeping pressure off one hoof. The slight swelling around the coronet band was barely visible from this distance. "Stone bruise on the left fore," she said clearly. "Recent. Probably picked up a sharp rock on hard ground. He needs 3 days rest and poultices twice daily." Thornton nodded slowly. "Correct diagnosis. Treatment plan?" "Hot Epsom salt soaks morning and evening. Keep him on soft ground. Check for deeper puncture wounds." Eula May's voice grew stronger. "If the swelling don't go down in 2 days, call the veterinarian." Could be an abscess forming. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even Billy's mouth hung open. "Current cattle prices in Denver?" Thornton asked. "Prime beef, $12 a head. Good quality, 8 to 10. Range cattle, 5 to 7, depending on weight and condition." The numbers flowed from her memory like water. Price has been dropping since the drought hit the northern territories. Water requirements for healthy pasture management depends on the grass type and soil composition. Average range needs about 20 inches annual rainfall. Less than that, you need rotational grazing and water conservation. Eula May stepped down from the platform. Most ranchers overgraze their land because they don't understand soil recovery time. Thornton's weathered face cracked into what might have been a smile. Gentlemen, I believe this discussion is concluded. He turned to Eula May. My wagon's at the livery stable. We leave for the ranch in 1 hour. Sheriff Granger pushed through the crowd. Hold on there, Thornton. This arrangement needs some legal consideration. What law prevents me from hiring qualified personnel, Sheriff? Granger's jaw worked silently. No law existed against hiring anyone for ranch work. The sheriff knew it, and Thornton knew it. There are proper ways to conduct business, Billy sputtered. Social considerations, community standards. My community consists of cattle, horses, and paying customers in Denver. Thornton's voice cut like a blade. Miss, 1 hour. Bring whatever belongings you have. He walked away without another word. The crowd slowly dispersed, their entertainment ruined by unexpected reality. Eula May hurried back to the tiny room behind Henderson's store. Her possessions fit in a single carpet bag, clothes, her father's journal, and a small tin box containing her mother's wedding ring. She held the journal with trembling hands. Every page contained her father's careful notes about cattle breeding, pasture management, and animal husbandry, his life's work, written in precise handwriting during long evenings by lamplight. You ready for this, Daddy? She whispered to the empty room. An hour later, she sat beside Thornton on the wagon seat. The town fell away behind them as they rolled toward open country. Neither spoke for the first mile. Your father was Samuel Hayes, Thornton finally said. It wasn't a question. You knew him? By reputation. Best livestock man in Texas before he came north. Thornton guided the horses around a deep rut. Heard he could look at a sick animal and know exactly what was wrong. He taught me everything he knew. That what I'm counting on. They rode in silence for another mile. The landscape opened into rolling hills dotted with cattle. Thornton's spread stretched to the horizon in every direction. How bad is it? Eula May asked. Thornton's hands tightened on the reins. Lost half my herd to disease last year. The other half ain't thriving. Pastures producing less grass every season. Workers don't respect my foreman anymore. What about money? Burning through my savings faster than a prairie fire. Got maybe a year before I lose everything. Eula May studied the distant cattle. Even from here, she could see problems. The animals clustered in poor grazing areas while better grass went unused. Classic signs of mismanagement. Why me? She asked. You could hire experienced foremen from any number of big ranches. Thornton was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Because experienced foremen gave me this mess. His voice carried bitter frustration. And because desperate times call for desperate measures. The ranch buildings appeared ahead. Barns, corrals, and a large house that had seen better days. Workers stopped their tasks to stare as the wagon approached. Eula May straightened her shoulders. Her father's voice echoed in her memory one more time. Show them what you're made of, baby girl. The ranch hands gathered around the wagon like vultures circling carrion. Their faces showed everything from curiosity to open hostility. Eula May counted 12 men, all weathered by sun and hard work. Boys, meet your new ranch manager, Thornton announced as he climbed down from the wagon. The silence stretched like a taut rope. Then the laughter started. That's a good one, boss, wheezed an older cowhand with tobacco-stained teeth. Real funny. Thornton's expression didn't change. Jake, show Miss Hayes to the foreman's office. She'll need the ledgers and herd records. Jake's laughter died in his throat. Boss, you serious about this? Dead serious. A younger hand spat in the dirt. Ain't taking orders from no girl, especially not her kind. Then pack your gear and ride out. Thornton's voice cut like winter wind. Anyone else got objections to earning their pay? The men shuffled their feet and avoided eye contact. Jobs were scarce in this territory. Even prideful cowboys needed to eat. Eula May followed Jake to a small building near the main barn. The office reeked of stale tobacco and unwashed clothes. Papers covered every surface in chaotic piles. "Ledgers are in that cabinet," Jake muttered. "Good luck making sense of them." He left her alone with the mess. Eula May rolled up her sleeves and began sorting through the chaos. The numbers told a grim story. Cattle deaths had tripled over 2 years. Feed costs were astronomical. Veterinary bills showed repeated treatments for the same symptoms with no improvement. She studied the pasture rotation schedules. Her father's voice echoed in her memory as she traced the patterns with her finger. "Overgrazing kills the soil, baby girl. Grass needs time to recover or it stops growing entirely." The ranch was making every mistake her father had warned against. Cattle stayed on the same pastures too long. Water sources weren't properly maintained. No one tracked which animals were thriving and which were failing. Thornton appeared in the doorway an hour later. His face looked haggard in the lamplight. "What's your assessment?" "Your cattle are dying from contaminated water, not disease," Eula May said without looking up from the ledgers. "Someone's been treating symptoms instead of causes." "Explain." She pointed to a hand-drawn map on the wall. "Your main watering holes are downstream from that old mining operation. Runoff is poisoning the water supply." Thornton studied the map. "The Copper Creek mine's been abandoned for 5 years. Poison don't disappear just because miners leave." Eula May traced the water flow with her finger. "Metals leach into groundwater for decades. Your cattle drink it slow and get sick gradual-like." "How do you know this?" "My father dealt with the same problem in Texas. Took him 2 years to figure it out." She opened his journal to a detailed diagram. "He learned to test water sources and move herds to clean areas." Thornton leaned closer to study the notes. His eyes widened as he read her father's careful observations. "This is revolutionary work." He was ahead of his time. Pride swelled in Eula May's chest. "Said most ranchers think like their grandfathers instead of looking at what's actually happening." "What else?" "Your pasture rotation is destroying the grassland." She pulled out another map showing current grazing patterns. "Cattle stay on each section too long. Grass never recovers properly. The previous foreman said we needed to use every acre to maximize profits. He was wrong. My father proved that resting pastures actually increases long-term productivity." Eula May opened to another journal page. "Proper rotation can double grass yield within 2 growing seasons." Thornton sank into the office chair. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely hopeful. "Can you fix this?" "Maybe, but it'll require major changes. New water sources, complete pasture restructuring, different breeding strategies." Eula May met his gaze directly. "And your men will fight me every step of the way." "What do you need?" "Full authority to make decisions. No second-guessing from cowboys who think they know better." Her voice grew stronger. "And time. Results won't come overnight." Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Outside, cattle lowed in the distance and wind rattled the office windows. "Miss Hayes, I'm going to make you an offer that'll sound crazy." "I'm listening." "Partnership. 50-50 split of all profits if you can turn this ranch around within 1 year." His weathered hands gripped the desk edge. "If you fail, you keep $1,000 severance. If you succeed, you become co-owner of the largest ranch in 3 territories." Eula May's breath caught. Co-owner. The word seemed impossible. "Why would you risk everything on me?" Thornton's laugh held no humor. "Because I'm dying, Miss Hayes. Doctor gives me maybe 18 months. This ranch is my only legacy, and it's crumbling to dust." The confession hung in the air between them. Outside, night sounds filled the silence. "What's really at stake here?" she asked quietly. "More than just cattle and land." Thornton's eyes held depth she hadn't noticed before. "If we succeed, we prove that merit matters more than prejudice. If we fail, nothing changes, and the old ways win. Eula May thought of her father's dreams, his belief that knowledge and hard work could overcome any obstacle. His faith that someday the world would judge people by their abilities instead of their appearance. 1 year to save your ranch and change the world? That's about the size of it. She extended her hand across the desk. Mr. Thornton, you've got yourself a partner. His weathered hand engulfed hers in a firm grip. Call me Silas. Partners should use first names. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance. The sound carried across the darkened rangeland like a promise or a warning. Dawn broke over the Thornton Ranch with Eula May already in the saddle. She rode the perimeter, mapping water sources and studying grass conditions. Her father's journal lay open across her lap, pages fluttering in the morning breeze. The contaminated creek sparkled deceptively in the early light. Cattle had worn deep paths to its banks, unaware they were slowly poisoning themselves. She marked alternative water sources on her hand-drawn map. Miss Hayes. Jake rode up beside her, his horse dancing nervously. Boys are asking when you plan to start acting like management. Right now. She closed the journal and tucked it into her saddlebag. Move the entire south herd to the upper pastures, today. Those pastures been resting for months. Boss always said to use every acre. Boss was wrong. Those pastures are ready, and the south herd needs clean water. Her voice carried new authority. How long to move them? Jake scratched his stubbled jaw. 2 days, if we push hard. Do it. She rode back to the ranch house as the crew began their work. Silas stood on the porch, coffee cup in hand. His color looked better than yesterday. Already giving orders? Already seeing results? She dismounted and tied her horse to the rail. That south herd will start gaining weight within a week once they're off contaminated water. The men are grumbling. Let them grumble. They'll stop when they see healthy cattle. Word of the partnership spread through Millbrook Township like wildfire. By afternoon, 3 riders approached the ranch. Eula May recognized them from town, successful ranchers who usually ignored Thornton's operation. Marcus Holloway led the group. His silver hair and expensive boots marked him as the wealthiest landowner in the territory. His smile held all the warmth of a rattlesnake. Silas, heard you made some interesting business decisions lately. My business decisions are my own, Marcus. Course they are, but neighbors look out for each other. Holloway's gaze found Eula May standing beside the porch. Heard you hired some unusual help. Hired the best ranch manager I could find. Holloway's laugh scraped like gravel. That what we're calling it? Management? You got something to say, Marcus. Say it plain. Just concerned about property values. Strange arrangements make honest folks nervous. His smile never wavered. Bad for the whole territory when people stop following natural order. Eula May stepped forward. Mr. Holloway, isn't it? Your cattle operation runs about 1,500 head? Holloway's eyes narrowed. What's it to you? Lost about 200 last winter to respiratory illness. Tried 3 different treatments. None worked. She'd heard the gossip in town. Problem is your winter feeding strategy. Now you listen here, girl. You're feeding hay that's been stored too damp. Creates mold that damages cattle lungs. Switch to properly cured feed and your losses will drop by 60%. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Holloway's face had gone red above his expensive collar. Silas, you better teach your help some manners. Seems like she just offered you free advice that could save thousands of dollars. Holloway wheeled his horse around. This arrangement won't last, Silas. Mark my words. The 3 riders disappeared in a cloud of dust. Silas watched them go with troubled eyes. Made an enemy today. Had him already. Eula May climbed the porch steps. Question is what he plans to do about it. The answer came 2 weeks later. Jake rode in hard, his horse lathered with sweat. Miss Hayes, south herd's been scattered. Someone cut the fences during the night. She grabbed her rifle and saddled her horse. The ride to the upper pastures took 20 minutes. Fresh tire tracks marked the grass where riders had driven the cattle through broken fence posts. How many missing? She asked. Near 50 head. scattered across 3 different properties. Convenient. Her jaw tightened. All scattered onto land owned by Holloway's friends. It took 2 days to gather the missing cattle. Some ranchers cooperated grudgingly. Others demanded payment for trespassing damages. The legal fees ate into the ranch's dwindling reserves. Sheriff Granger rode out during the roundup. He studied the cut fence posts with professional interest. Clean cuts, done with wire cutters, not weather damage. Someone's trying to sabotage us, Sheriff. Granger's weathered face remained neutral. Can't prove intent from cut wire. Could have been anyone passing through. But his eyes lingered on the tire tracks leading toward Holloway's property. More problems followed in quick succession. A hay shipment arrived spoiled, costing the ranch $300. 2 water pumps broke down on the same day, requiring expensive repairs. Bills began piling up on Silas's desk. "Someone's working mighty hard to see us fail," Eula May told him one evening. Marcus never did like competition. "This isn't about competition. It's about what we represent." She poured coffee from the pot on the stove. "Success means other people might try similar arrangements." Silas nodded slowly. "Change threatens people who profit from the old ways." Despite the sabotage, improvements continued. The cattle moved to clean water began gaining weight visibly. The rotational grazing system showed early signs of success. Grass grew thicker in the rested pastures. Some ranch hands grudgingly admitted the new methods worked. Others remained hostile, questioning every decision. Eula May pushed forward, documenting results in detailed reports. Daisy Caldwell visited the ranch on a Thursday afternoon. She brought fresh bread and town gossip. "Folks are talking about your partnership. Good things or bad things? Depends who's doing the talking." Daisy sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "Some say you're proving women can manage business same as men. Others say you're disrupting the natural order. What do you say?" "I say results speak louder than prejudice." That night, Silas collapsed while checking the evening chores. Eula May found him beside the barn, clutching his chest and gasping for breath. His face had gone gray in the lamplight. "Get the doctor," he whispered. She rode hard to town, her horse's hooves thundering against the packed earth. Dr. Morrison followed her back in his buggy, medical bag bouncing on the seat beside him. The diagnosis was grim. Silas's heart was failing faster than expected. Complete rest was essential for any chance of recovery. "How long?" Eula May asked quietly. "Hard to say. Could be months, could be weeks." She stood alone on the ranch porch as the doctor's buggy disappeared into darkness. 1 year to save the ranch had become a race against time itself. With Silas bedridden, Eula May ran the ranch alone. The workload crushed down on her shoulders like a mountain, but she pushed forward. Cattle needed constant attention. Workers required daily supervision. Financial records demanded nightly review. The sabotage escalated. Feed deliveries arrived late or spoiled. Fences suffered mysterious damage weekly. Equipment broke down with suspicious frequency. Each incident cost money the ranch couldn't afford. Jake approached her one morning, his face troubled. "Miss Hayes, got some concerning news from town." "What now?" "Sheriff's been asking questions about your legal status, whether the partnership's legitimate under territorial law." Eula May's stomach dropped. Legal challenges could destroy everything, even if they ultimately failed. "What kind of questions?" "Whether a woman can own ranch property, whether the contract's binding without male relatives signing off." Jake kicked at the dirt. "Word is someone's pushing him to investigate." She didn't need to guess who. Marcus Holloway had connections throughout the territory. Judges, lawyers, politicians, men who shared his vision of proper social order. That afternoon, she rode to the upper pastures to check the relocated herd. The cattle looked healthier already. Their coats gleamed in the sunlight, and they'd gained noticeable weight. Her father's methods were working. A dust cloud appeared on the horizon. 3 riders approached at a steady pace. Eula May recognized Sheriff Granger's distinctive silhouette leading the group. "Miss Hayes." Granger touched his hat brim politely. "Need to discuss some legal matters concerning your arrangement here." What legal matters? Complaints have been filed questioning the legitimacy of your partnership with Mr. Thornton. His voice remained carefully neutral. Territorial law regarding property ownership and business contracts. The partnership's completely legal. That's for the courts to decide. Meanwhile, there are questions about your authority to make financial decisions. Eula May's hands tightened on her reins. Sheriff, are you here in an official capacity? Just gathering information at this point. But Miss Hayes, you should know that powerful people are taking an interest in this situation. Something in his tone made her study his face more carefully. His weathered features held an expression she couldn't quite read. Warning, maybe, or concern. Sheriff. Can I ask you something? Shoot. You ever hear of Samuel Hayes? Worked ranches down in Texas before coming north? Granger went completely still. His horse shifted nervously beneath him, sensing the tension. Might have heard the name. He was my father. Died 6 months ago. She watched his face carefully. Funny thing is, he used to talk about a brother who went off to war. Never came back. The other two riders exchanged glances. Granger's jaw worked silently, like he was chewing words he couldn't swallow. Miss Hayes, we should continue this conversation in private. They rode to a grove of cottonwood trees beside the creek. Granger dismounted and gestured for his companions to wait at a distance. Your father ever mention his brother's name? Thomas. Called him Tommy when they were boys. Eula May's heart hammered against her ribs. Said Tommy had a scar on his left hand from a childhood accident. Granger slowly pulled off his glove. A white scar ran across his palm, old and deep. Samuel always was too smart for his own good. Uncle Tommy? He nodded once, sharply. Been watching over you since your father died. From a distance. But watching. Then why didn't you stop the auction? Why let them humiliate me? Because I've been working undercover for 2 years, investigating Marcus Holloway's operation. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Had to maintain my cover even when it meant watching you suffer. What operation? Land fraud, cattle rustling, bribery of territorial officials. Granger's eyes hardened. Holloway's been systematically destroying small ranchers to consolidate territory. Your success threatens his entire scheme. The pieces clicked together in Eula May's mind. The sabotage, the legal challenges, the convenient scattering of cattle onto Holloway's friend's land. He's behind everything, every bit of it. But I'm close to having enough evidence to bring him down. Granger remounted his horse. The rustling operation you've been experiencing, it's part of a territory-wide conspiracy. Can you prove it? Working on it. But Eula May, you need to know that Holloway's planning something big, the Territorial Cattle Convention next month. What about it? He's going to use it to publicly challenge your partnership, make it a test case for territorial law. Granger's expression grew grim. If he succeeds, it'll set legal precedent that could destroy similar arrangements across the entire region. And if he fails, his whole criminal network gets exposed. Too much attention, too many questions. They rode back toward the ranch in thoughtful silence. Eula May's mind raced through possibilities and plans. Uncle Tommy, does Silas know about your investigation? Suspected something. Never confirmed it. We need to tell him. All of us working together gives us better odds. Agreed. But Eula May, this is dangerous. Holloway has killed people to protect his interests. Then we better make sure we get him first. That evening they gathered in Silas's bedroom. The rancher looked frail against the white pillows, but his eyes remained sharp. Always wondered why you never pressed charges against the rustlers, Sheriff. Needed them to lead me to the bigger fish. Granger outlined his investigation in detail. Holloway's got judges, territorial officials, even some federal marshals in his pocket. How do we stop him? Evidence, documentation, witnesses willing to testify. Eula May pulled out her father's journal. And we use the territorial convention to expose him publicly. That's where he plans to destroy you legally. Then we turn his own trap against him. Her voice grew stronger. We prove that merit beats corruption, that truth wins over prejudice. Silas struggled to sit up straighter. What do you need from me? Your reputation, your connections with honest ranchers. She met his gaze directly. And your faith that we can pull this off. You've got it, both of you. Outside, night wind rattled the windows. The sound carried across the darkened ranch like a promise of the storm to come. The Territorial Cattle Convention filled Millbrook's largest meeting hall with ranchers from across 3 territories. Eula May stood at the back of the room, her father's journal clutched in her hands. Silas sat in the front row, still pale but determined to witness the confrontation. Marcus Holloway commanded the center stage like a king holding court. His expensive suit and silver hair marked him as territorial aristocracy. The assembled ranchers hung on his every word. Gentlemen, we face a crisis that threatens the very foundation of our way of life. His voice carried easily through the packed hall. Unqualified individuals making decisions that affect legitimate business interests. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Eula May recognized many faces from town, men who'd watched her humiliation at the auction with cruel satisfaction. I present Exhibit A, Holloway gestured toward Eula May, a partnership that violates every principle of sound business practice and social order. Sheriff Granger stood near the side door, his deputies positioned strategically around the room. His eyes met Eula May's briefly. The signal was clear. Everything was ready. Mr. Holloway, the territorial judge raised his hand. What specific legal violations do you allege? Fraud, Your Honor. No woman possesses the knowledge or authority to manage a major ranching operation. Holloway's smile was sharp as broken glass. This arrangement represents a mockery of legitimate business practices. I object to those allegations. Silas struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his walking stick. Miss Hayes has increased ranch productivity by 40% in 6 months. Temporary improvements don't constitute management qualification. Then let me demonstrate permanent qualifications. Eula May stepped forward, her voice cutting through the room's buzz. I formally request the opportunity to present evidence of my capabilities. Judge Morrison nodded. The floor recognizes Miss Hayes. She walked to the front of the room, feeling hundreds of hostile eyes tracking her movement. Her father's journal felt warm in her hands. Gentlemen, ranching success depends on understanding cattle, land, and markets. She opened the journal to a detailed diagram. My father, Samuel Hayes, revolutionized livestock management in Texas. These are his methods. She explained rotational grazing systems, water quality management, and disease prevention. The room grew quiet as she outlined specific techniques and their measurable results. Pretty words don't prove competence. Holloway's interruption carried sneering dismissal. Any fool can memorize someone else's ideas. Then let's discuss practical application. Eula May turned to face the assembled ranchers. Mr. Patterson, your operation lost 60 head to respiratory illness last winter. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. What's that to you? The problem is moldy feed storage. Your hay barn lacks proper ventilation, creating conditions that damage cattle lungs. She pulled out detailed notes. Switch to elevated storage with cross ventilation, and your losses will drop by 70%. How could you possibly know that? Because I've studied every major ranch operation in this territory. Mr. Williams, your calving mortality rate runs 15% above average due to inadequate mineral supplementation. Mr. Foster, your grazing rotation schedule is destroying soil productivity. The room erupted in startled conversation. Ranchers who dismissed her as incompetent now stared with new attention. Enough theatrics. Holloway's voice rose above the noise. Anyone can gather gossip and make wild claims. Then let's discuss your operation, Mr. Holloway. Eula May's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. Specifically, your cattle acquisition methods. Holloway's face went rigid. My business practices are beyond reproach. Are they? Sheriff Granger stepped forward, pulling out a thick folder. Because I have documented evidence of systematic cattle rustling, land fraud, and bribery of territorial officials. This is outrageous. Sheriff, you're clearly biased in favor of this irregular arrangement. The only irregularity here is your criminal enterprise. Granger opened the folder, revealing photographs and financial records. 2 years of investigation have uncovered your methods, Mr. Holloway. Judge Morrison leaned forward. What evidence do you present, Sheriff? Financial records showing payments to corrupt officials. Witness testimony from rustlers willing to testify against Holloway in exchange for reduced sentences. Granger's voice grew stronger. And documented proof of systematic sabotage against legitimate ranchers. Lies and fabrication, including the attempted destruction of the Thornton Ranch. Eula May pulled out her own documentation. Every incident of sabotage, every mysterious equipment failure, every convenient cattle scattering traced directly to your operation. The room buzzed with shocked conversation. Several ranchers who'd supported Holloway began edging away from him. Your Honor, I move for immediate arrest warrants. Granger signaled his deputies. Marcus Holloway and his associates are charged with conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering under territorial law. This is a conspiracy to destroy legitimate business. Holloway backed toward the rear exit. I won't submit to this kangaroo court. 2 deputies blocked his retreat. The trap had closed completely. Judge Morrison banged his gavel for order. Mr. Holloway, you're under arrest pending investigation. Sheriff, present your evidence for formal review. The next hour passed in a blur of testimony, documentation, and legal procedures. Eula May presented her ranching innovations to increasingly respectful attention. Silas provided character testimony that carried weight throughout the territory. When the dust settled, Holloway sat in shackles while his criminal network crumbled around him. Corrupt officials fled or surrendered to avoid prosecution. The territorial government began cleaning house with impressive efficiency. Miss Hayes, Judge Morrison addressed her directly. Based on demonstrated competence and documented results, this court recognizes your partnership with Mr. Thornton as legitimate and binding under territorial law. Applause filled the meeting hall. Not universal, but genuine and growing. Ranchers who'd scorned her now approached with questions about her methods. 6 months later, Eula May stood before a new audience. The Western Ranchers Association had invited her to present her father's techniques to their annual convention. Silas, recovered and healthier than he'd been in years, introduced her with obvious pride. Gentlemen, I present the finest ranch manager in the American West. She looked out over the crowd, seeing faces from across the frontier, men who judged her by results rather than appearance. The old world was changing, one successful partnership at a time. My father always said that land and cattle don't care about the color of the hands that tend them. Her voice carried clearly through the packed hall. They only care about knowledge, dedication, and respect. At the back of the room, a young Mexican boy watched with wide eyes as his employer, a progressive rancher from Colorado, took careful notes. The cycle of opportunity continued, expanding with each success. Eula May opened her father's journal and began sharing the wisdom that would transform the American West.